Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an IEM review. And today, finally, after I don't know how long it has been, probably like 2-3 months, maybe more, I'm taking a look at the Supermix 4. Yes, today we are reviewing one of the, I want to say, mid-price hype contenders. And we figure out if this actually is as good as some of the hypes say or not. And as usual, packaging accessories. That's a packaging, and you can already see it's very unique in terms of its optics. It's this shiny, like one say emerald green here, and it has this exploded schematic again of the Supermix. So you can see here BA, and I think this is piezo and dynamic. I actually forgot what the driver configuration here was. And in the back here we have some information here, and here also it says the configuration here. This has dynamic driver, 1 balanced armature, 1 planar magnetic, 1 piezo, and 1 matrix acoustic structure, whatever that's supposed to be. Probably they mean here it just has a acoustic chamber at the back. And we also have a frequency response here, which thanks to my lighting and the general structure is a bit difficult to read, but we check that out later on. I like this packaging generally because, give me frequency response of what I can expect is generally nice, and also this looks pretty unique. Opening it, well, not so unique no more. Now we get greeted with the matte black here, and opening this would reveal the IEM and the accessories here. Let's quickly remove this accessory box if I get it out here. And as accessories, you basically get, let's see if I have it actually inside. Oh, I don't have. And now quickly for the carrying case, I had to actually find it. It was somewhere completely random in my flat. And yeah, it's okay. The zipper is smooth enough. It's like gold colored. I'm not the greatest fan of that. Inside there is a net, so you can actually throw a few accessories inside. It's not the most sturdy overall, but absolutely fine. And yeah, overall it's okay. But the ear tips you get here are actually pretty decent. This is the same ear tip that you also get with some Pen IEMs and with the LZ IEMs. And you can see here this comes in S, M, and L. And that's actually more on the finished side of things, but they are also relatively squishy, and the light additional mantle around the outlet here does help them to stay in your ear relatively well. Unfortunately, at this price point, I definitely do expect more, like at least a second set of silicone ear tips. Much better would be actually a whole set of also foam tips that goes with it, because that's just a bit little for the price here. But okay, that's it about packaging accessories. Let's come to the actual IEM here. Sorry for the cut, here's a bad boy. I was stuck with a cable and another cable. So that's the IEM. And before we take a look at the cable today, we take a look at the IEM. And you could already see here, this was 2-pin connector, and it was relatively easy to pull out by still having enough friction. And also visible directly here, the actual 2-pin connector is not color matched, and its integration is decent but not great. So definitely you can see the seams around it, and yeah, it's not the best at this price point even. Right next to it you have a pressure hole, I assume, or a tuning hole, and it comes with this brass inlet here. I'm not sure why you need a brass inlet, but okay. And then on the inside here there is no visible L&R indicator here. That's printed on this side, and there's also no other pressure hole, at least on the inside. Then the front here, as you can see, this is sound tubes, so we get 3 of those, and no lip, and this is an advantage and disadvantage at the same time. So advantage is, obviously this nozzle is now more on the thin side of things, and it's actually pretty uncomfortable as a small spoiler. Disadvantage though, if you have actually a bigger tip, well, that won't really stick onto this, and a good example would be the Asla Max tips, which in theory would fit this rather well for me, but in practice they constantly slide out when I just mount it and put it in my ear. So yeah, it comes with both advantages and disadvantages. And yeah, L&R indicator printed on here. Unfortunately, not that well visible in normal day circumstances. Also, it's printed on, not etched in or something, so it will probably also use itself off over time. At least it has high contrast here, so that's good. And what more to say here? The top faceplate here is made of aluminium, and it's kind of this matte brushed optic, but it also has an more reflective ring around, and that doesn't look bad at all. I do dig this minimalistic aesthetic here, but I can see other people that would like to see a bit more going on here. And also noteworthy here, there's a bigger pressure or tuning hole, I assume probably more like tuning hole here, that also has a mesh behind, so there will be no dirt getting in. And last but not least, let's tackle the seams around it. As you can see here, these seams are rather good. You do see them, but even with my fingernail, I can only notice them at this edge here. Like now my fingernail is stuck here all around. It's barely feeling anything. And I think the integration of the faceplate overall is done pretty well. Next, let's come to the cable here. And as you can see, this is a rather thick cable, and it is actually rather smooth in day-to-day usage overall, I can say that. Yeah, so the only disadvantage I see with this cable overall, and this is a small criticism here, this again is just slippery. There's no way you can hold on to this in a new DAC amp, or generally because when it's new, right, it will be a bit more tight. And the second criticism I have is this here. You can see this is no friction, like really if I just wiggle it like that, it will move. So it's completely useless, and I could also just leave it out. Other than that, it's similar to the S12 cable, and that means, as said, it's on the thicker side of things. It has this, structure going on the cables here. It feels a bit textured, but overall, it's thicker. It feels good in your hand. I doubt it will ever just break in normal usage because it's just a bit thicker. Also, the strain release here actually, as you can see, is wiggling around a bit and doing things. I still wish it would be a bit longer and a bit thicker overall, so it would release the strain a bit better. But that's really just ever so slight nitpicking. And then the cables on top, as you can see, are the same thickness as the ones below. That means they're also on the thicker side of things, and they also stay pretty damn smooth overall. Going further to the ear hooks here. Yep, as you can see, ear hooks are medium thick rubberized, on the thicker side of things, and minor problem that you might encounter if you have bigger ears. As you see, the rubberization is relatively thick, and the bending radius is also on the smaller and like 270 degrees bend side. So that means in day-to-day life, if your ear is bigger, you might get a pressure hotspot probably around here or around here. Depends on your ear size. For me, I got a pressure hotspot after I think like 40-50 minutes or so. I feel it a bit, but I'm also pretty sensitive there. So normally you should be fine. And then last but not least, what I also like here, colored indicator, file and R, very nice. And yeah, that sums up cable quality as well. I like the cable, it's pretty damn good for the price, and no real big breaking points here. Next, comfort and fit. And let's get the IEM quickly in before I show you the measurements again. This is a semi-custom shell. It's very well done. The nozzle is on medium long side of things. And yeah, due to the lack of lip, as I said before, it means it will also feel the nozzle feels smaller in your than it actually is. But again, as said, this comes at the disadvantage. You can't mount wider tips on it. But if you mount a tip that actually fits on it, and for me, my favorite is the XLR Stax 2 here. Sorry, it's a bit dirty. I literally have been wearing this before I started this review just to fresh it up again, because I have so many amps around that I constantly listen to or like listen to for reviews, and I just wanted to make sure my actually writing that I have done probably weeks earlier is still accurate, and it was. So yeah, with the right tip, really comfortable, medium length insertion here. If you have a deeper ear, definitely use a longer tip, but for me this shorter tip, the XLR Stax 2, exactly what it works for me. So it basically inserts all the way in my pinner and just fits me perfectly, like really like a glove here. And that means, yeah, absolutely no problem in terms of comfort and fit for me. And I think most people should be also dealing with this absolutely well. As I said, if you have a deeper ear, use a bit longer of a tip. But if you have a more shallow ear, yep, use a short tip like me. And medium-sized tips, like what's included here, is probably exactly the right choice for most people. Next, isolation. And I wrote down in my review I was wearing the Polar PA02 before I came to the Supermix. And I think the Supermix does isolate a bit worse than the Polar, but by no means bad at all. So that means in most situations the isolation with this will be absolutely fine. In the office, at home, even if you go to work at like not so busy roads. Even on more busy roads you should be okay-ish. But again, in louder environments, definitively use foam tips with this. This will up the isolation a bit more and will make it a very compelling isolating IEM here. But again, as I said, definitely the PA02 would be a bit better. But what the PiO2 does not have, it's wind sensitive. And this one is not. You can just wear it outside. It will give you just a light noise if it's windy, but not much more. But the PiO2 will be like so not a fan of that. So, coming to drivability, and yeah, this one clocks in at a very efficient, wait, let me again double check, because my review actually noted the wrong impedance here. It's 7.2 ohms at 1 kilohertz, plus minus 15% at 120 decibels per VRMS at 1 kilohertz. So this thing is very efficient according to the data sheet. And in reality, I can tell you, yeah, it also is rather efficient. That means on my random Apple dongle that I have lying around here, where I try most things out, it does absolutely well. Like, there isn't much to criticize there. And if you up the power to something like, let me get my up 5 in, the up 5, which was what I used most of the time, well, you basically get 100% out of this. And if you up the power even more to my desktop setup, I didn't have the feeling I got anything else. So that means in percentages, Apple dongle gives me like 90%, maybe even 95% of what it can do. And yeah, my up 5 with Chat has basically double the power, a bit more, but not much more. Okay, and now we come to the core of this review. And yeah, so general sound characteristics. Again, this is kind of harmonish. It comes with a good sub-bass boost. It comes with a decent lower treble / upper mid boost there. And I will basically mostly probably compare this in the following review to either the EJ07M. Yes, it's 4 times the price, but check out the frequency response. Damn, this is close. Like, really, when I put this in my ear, I was like, huh, this sounds familiar. And yeah, other IEMs, like for instance the Quintet, which should be more price performance wise closer here, as you can also see, it's also rather close. But it definitely has this additional mid-treble peak at like 7.5K, which, yeah, this one does not have. And that means it does definitely sound a bit less bright overall. But it's still bright, don't get me wrong. Because, yeah, as I said, harmonish, like more like U-shaped than V-shaped overall. And in the treble extension wise, again, check out the graph. Like, according to the graph, this has a decent treble extension to like 13K before dipping. To my ear, it's more like 14K or something like that, before there isn't much information going on. But yeah, so that means you have a decent amount of upper treble here, and there's splash and sizzle to be had, and generally comes off as rather detailed for the price. EJ07M, I would say, is also a bit similar here, but maybe EJ07 has a few extra decibels in upper treble according to my ear, so you do get a bit more detail on top, but it's really not a lot more. And as you can also see by the graph, for 13K peak that is coming off a bit unnatural here with the Supermix, the EJ07M does not have, and generally just sounds a bit more natural overall. But again, like, it comes off pretty similar in terms of detail retrieval. Again, just going to show us diminishing returns in the audio hobby hit so hard. And yeah, that brings me then to mid-treble. And again, you can check it out. It's very similar to the EJ07M. It has a few extra decibels here. And it's similar to the Quintet in a sense, but it's coming off as a bit more brightish, between like, give or take 9K and 6K. But it's not a much more. And again, like, because the balance is similar to the EJ07M, for me it also sounds similar to the EJ07M overall. And that means you don't really lack anything in the mid-treble department. The dip that the graph shows here actually to my ear is not resolving as big as it actually is. And I really don't have any complaints about the mid-treble department whatsoever here. I really like the Persona 5 soundtrack with this one, Interstellar, Linkin Park, Metallica, Iron Maiden. It doesn't matter, everything I threw at this just sounded good to me. And again, I think the main issue for some people might be that the Supermix is, again, we've thrown EJ07M, it's a few decibels brighter than that, and that means some people will probably find this a bit too bright already. But compared to the Quintet, you can see the treble balancing between basically 3K all the way to 14K is pretty similar. Minus, this one does not have a 7.5K peak here. And I think this makes it overall the better tuned IEM versus the Quintet. But again, if you like treble, the Quintet is a good option here. It's a bit more expensive, but definitively in the similar price performance category, and also in the similar performance category generally. And in lower treble here, I think this is the biggest deal breaker for most people. Probably, because again, throwing on EJ07M, you can clearly see this has more energy in the lower treble / upper mid department, and that absolutely translates to female vocals that to my ear are a bit more clear, but definitely lack some body overall. And the EJ07M, just this type of signature overall better to my ear, but because I'm a treble head, I really don't mind this at all. I just want to say, right, if you're not a treble head, I think this is probably a bit much, and you most likely want to reduce 2.8K by 3 decibels in order to get something that's overall pretty well sounding. But because I don't mind that, for me it's absolutely fine. And then mids here, yeah, the mids generally have a good body, a good tonality, a good clarity, and it doesn't have the weird timbre that I have sometimes the feeling with the PA02, definitely does not have that. And it's pretty similar in a sense to the quintet here, but yeah, mids are absolutely pretty well done, and I don't really have complaints at all. Lower mids, yeah, I mean, you can see they are a bit pronounced, like ever so lightly, because the bass shelf here starts at like 300 Hertz, but really it's ever so lightly only, and it really does not interfere with the mids at all. And you do get this satisfying separation from bass to mids, and that basically also means in the bass department, it's relatively technical overall, it's capable, it punches, it has a pretty decent but not so great sub-bass quality, but overall for the price point it's absolutely fine. The only thing is that I might want to criticize the bass overall is, yeah, the sub-bass quality is not the best, and the graph doesn't indicate this, but in reality it just means in my benchmark track Mountains from Interstellar, again for people who don't know, it has like a bass drop at like 2 minutes 7, and that goes all the way to 2 minutes 16, and it rolls off from like 60 Hertz to all the way to 20 Hertz. And you will be able to hear the 20 Hertz note at like 2 minutes 16. With this one, yeah, it's like 2 minutes 14 and a half if I'm generous. And that means while not being bad, it's absolutely edged out by the EJ07M, which simply has the way better bass driver overall. It's also faster than EJ07M and punches a bit better, but it's also 4 times the price. So, I mean, for this price point, like, again, it's close to the EJ07M that I would consider it good bass for the price point. And then coming to Soundstage, layering, and imaging. And yeah, Soundstage-wise, the PA02 definitively does better there. This one is a bit cramped in a sense, and it doesn't feel as spacious as the PA02. But overall, it's not a big issue for an IEM for me, especially this price point. Especially because, yeah, this most of the time has like 5 layers. PA02 might do this a bit better because in like most of my library it had like 5 layers. This one a bit less, but still you have 5 layers for a good amount of time, so that's fine. And also imaging, I mean, it's absolutely okay here. Again, it's about on par with the quintet and the PA02 overall, and that means you can easily pinpoint where enemies are coming from or where sound cues are happening in the room. Just Soundstage right? It feels a bit more cramped than the others. And yeah, EJ07M on the other hand, well, this definitely sounds like it has a bigger stage and it also better imaging. But again, it's 4 times the price, so the upgrade you get at the EJ07M is questionable for the price it wants to charge. And then last, before we come to the verdict, separation, dynamic, and coherence. And again, it's rather good here. Separation, definitely a strong point of this IEM. Dynamics and coherence, also pretty damn good. And actually for the driver configuration it has, I have to admit, I expected the coherence to be worse. But it's actually doing rather well here. The only criticism one might have is due to the choice of driver type here, it can come off in the upper treble as a bit grainy overall, but it's not a big issue overall, and for the most part the timbre here is fine. And again, EJ07M, yeah, it's 4 times the price. It does a bit better job overall in terms of timbre, and also the DD just sound a bit better overall, but for this price it's no issue at all. And yeah, everything in this department is also exactly how I would want an IEM to be. Bring me to the verdict. Yeah, I mean, you probably got it from the gist of this review so far. The Supermix hits home for me in most aspects. It's rather technical for its price. It's pretty damn well tuned. It looks like chic, understated. It fits well, has a good cable. So, For a strong recommendation, it basically only lacks a few minor aspects to me. First one being upper mid/lower treble is a bit spicy for most people. And also the light graininess on tops, I think some people will probably notice, which is not a big deal for me at all, but I just want to say this takes a bit of its natural tonality away. And yeah, combining that with the bare bones accessories, yeah, unfortunately I can't give it a strong recommendation. Like for instance, the S12 hat, that thing as an overall package is very good. This thing not so much as an overall package, but I think it's way more competently tuned, and that means this one is definitively recommended from me. Just you need to like treble a bit. If you don't like treble, this can be easily fixed with one filter basically. Everything past 2.8K, give it -3 decibel, will be sounding really nice. But even as is, it sounds very competent, and yeah, I will be recommending it. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, recommendations, or criticisms, please leave a comment. Spector out.